have with me Mr. Nitin Sood, the CFO of PVR Limited. Thank you so much, sir, for taking the time out to speak with us.
Thank you.
Okay. Sir, do we expect the April-June quarter to be a washout quarter? What kind of revenues are we seeing, considering this quarter saw most of it being locked down because of states imposing a lockdown?
Yes, you're right. I think while the businesses had begun to bounce back in Q4, we see a lot of South Indian film releases being announced. And towards the end of March, the Hindi film industry had gone ahead and announced a slew of films slated for release in this year. Unfortunately, as we ran into the second wave beginning of April, most of the cinemas started shutting down. And as of now, our entire circuit across the country shut down. So you will potentially see very minimal revenues because we were operational for very few days in April, and that also part of the circuit. So our focus again, this time is really to manage our costs, conserve our liquidity, and hopefully tide through the next few months before we bounce back again.
Okay. Sir, you've mentioned in your con call also yesterday that you're looking at renegotiating your rentals with a lot of your landlords. Can you tell us what's the progress on that as of now? Are you able to do to renegotiate it again to probably the levels that you saw during the first wave, or are you negotiating lower rentals considering this is another washout quarter for you?
Yeah, so all of this has happened quite dramatically in the last few weeks, and last year most of our discussions with our landlord partners was for waiver of rentals during the period we were shut, and then some discounts as we reopen till the time business comes back to normalcy. And most of the discussions were or the agreements that we had reached were for the period ended 31st March 2021. Because we were hoping that the business will start bouncing back. Unfortunately, as we are shut down again, we have recommenced those discussions again with our partners. Our sense is that we'll have more clarity on some of these only around the time when cinemas reopen. But to convey your point, we've asked for similar reliefs as what we had asked last time, and we're quite hopeful that we will get reliefs from our partners. What that quantum will be and what that value of relief will be slightly difficult to comment at this stage.
Okay. So with your continuous conversations with the industry, when do we expect launches, or is there an indefinite pause to when we expect Hindi movie launches to actually hit the screens?
Yeah, so at least the picture on the content side is looking very, very good. What we are seeing is that during this period, the entire last year when shootings had commenced, a lot of films had shot and they're virtually ready for release. And if you recall, in the early March, the Bollywood film industry had come out and people had started releasing, announcing their release calendar for the year, and almost all weeks for the year were taken away. All the big weekends were taken away by the big films. As we've run into the pandemic and we've lost few months this financial year, there will be maybe a little time before cinemas reopen. I think we have a problem of plenty. We have just too many films awaiting release. And our sense is once cinemas reopen, there will be a mad scramble for dates. Also, to add on to that, if you look at the international markets have begun to open up. China, South Korea, Australia, UK, and US all have begun to open up. Hollywood has started releasing films in those markets. The response in the initial weeks has been quite good. And I think consumers are coming back to cinemas with a vengeance. So we think all of that will play out even in India as well, which is very, very, highly content-driven market. We make so many films. People have been starved of, getting out of their homes. I think the only thing that we need to wait for and solve for the COVID situation on the ground, and hopefully more vaccinations, which gives confidence to people to step out.
Okay. So despite vaccination actually picking up, there is talk of a third wave. Now, is there a possibility that you could lose out these big ticket launches to OTT platforms?
See, we are not too worried about that. There will be few films which will continue to go and release at OTT platforms, but you must understand India makes about 1,500 to 1,800 films a year. In the last whole financial year, we lost about 20 to 25 films. And that will continue to happen. Some films will continue to go. But I think most of the big film guys, most of the producers have realized that there is no economic model and rationale without going to theaters, as bulk of the revenues come from theaters. Some of the recent experiments on release on OTT platforms, trying to do a premium VOD where you're charging customers on a pay-per-use basis, have not, turned out to be successful. And we don't think, in our estimate, any big films will want to do that. And if you really look at last few months, where this big concern was everything will release on OTT, that hasn't really happened because there is no economic rationale on both sides, the filmmakers as well as the OTT guys to, pay that money.
Okay. Sir, in the previous year, you did manage to add some more screens. What kind of expansion are we looking at in FY22?
So last year, our focus was we had a few partly completed screens we wanted to finish off. We opened 13 new screens last year. We have 19 screens which are further ready and will open once we get a permission to reopen cinemas. But apart from that, we've currently suspended all our capex programs. We've not taken any new screens for fit outs because we want to see how the situation evolves. And once we get to reopen, then we will take a call on capex program. But there is a massive pipeline of screens currently awaiting, fit outs that we have. But we will take a call on that maybe later part of this year.
Okay. Sir, your F&B business, you've looked at food deliveries in 3 markets, I believe, so far in NCR, Bangalore, and in Chennai. Do we expect you to roll your food deliveries via Swiggy and Zomato to other cities, considering it would bring in some kind of revenues at this time, considering theaters are shut?
Yeah, see, we are working on that food delivery platform. Currently, most of the food delivery services that we were running were largely dependent on cinemas making those local deliveries. Since cinemas themselves are shut, those services are also temporarily suspended right now. But yes, once we get to reopen, the idea is to have a food delivery service in most of the major cities. We've enhanced our menu offering, and the idea is that we will have a proper food delivery service in all the key cities across the country once we reopen.
Okay. Post the QIP, so can you tell us what your net debt stands at currently?
So we raised 800 crores via QIP as on early February. Most of this cash is lying intact. As on 31st of March, we had a cash balance of 730 crores and undrawn credit lines of about 75 crores. Our gross debt was 1,350 crores and net of cash of about 730 in the books. Our net debt was roughly about 600 odd crores as on 31st of March.
Okay. And sir, do you have any further fundraising plans in place?
We currently don't have any fundraising plans in place because we have ample liquidity to tide through the pandemic, and hopefully later most of what is going to evolve during the year. So currently no fundraising plans. I'd just like to add that we've also got some liquidity support from the government under the ECLGS scheme, which has recently been launched by the government for the hospitality sector. And we have the ability to raise additional credit lines from our banking partners to further supplement our liquidity.
Okay. And so lastly, to close things, can you tell us how do you expect the entire year to pan out in terms of revenue for you?
Very tough to say. It's crystal ball gazing, but our sense is as soon as we receive permissions to open cinemas in all the key markets, we expect new film releases to start happening fairly quickly this time around as compared to the last wave. We think film releases will commence in potentially a four-week window. And hopefully, if COVID situation remains on the ground and things look better, the second half of the year, which H2 October to March, should look very, very strong.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for taking the time out to speak with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.